Hello everyone, this is Mohit Patel, creative director of my little game design group Cyberverse Studios. This video is part of a series of videos showcasing various projects that either I or my team members and I have worked on. So enjoy and feel free to leave comments below. Hello once again. Today's game that we will be covering is Uprising of the Dead. This was actually the biggest game that not only I developed, but the biggest game that I developed with a team, so I had I think 3 or 4 other people working with me. There isn't much to actually show in the form of the game, because though this was the largest game that we developed, it was actually one of my biggest mistakes, because at the time, the one thing I didn't realize was that engines, including GameMaker, have limits, and I tried pushing this GameMaker 8 engine to the limit. And that proved to be a problem when actually running the game. I'm not going to actually run it in this developer diary because it is almost impossible to play. The frame rate is extremely buggy, and it's simply because of the sheer amount of things I tried putting in here, the sheer amount of commands and code that have to run at the same time. The amount of objects on screen is immense, as you can see on this 2-dimensional version of the map here. I'll turn off the grid so it looks a little better. That was my biggest mistake, but when it comes down to it, this developer diary is all about the concept of the game, and that's what I'm here to talk about. This was the biggest game that I've developed with the team, which is the reason we call ourselves Cyberverse Studios, because there are a few games that we work on as a team. This was the biggest game we worked on. This was during my freshman year of high school, and we would work after school in our tech department. And it was a really fun project to work on. As you can see on this 2D map, it was huge. We took up a lot of space. Probably explains why it doesn't run that well. There were a variety of things involved in this game. I'm not going to go into detail of all the stuff behind it, because that would take hours. It was a 6-month project, and it was one map, and it was pretty much a zombie survival game where you would play as someone who's trying to survive in this environment. In terms of the game, we made up for everything we lacked graphically in the form of gameplay. So gameplay was a high priority with this game. There was also a small arcade in the game. We had a developer working on 2-dimensional games to go in here to play in the one of the shops located on our map. There were a bunch of side activities to do, is pretty much what I'm getting at. This game just had an immense wealth of things to do, and if it was playable, it would actually be great fun to try to survive as long as you can. And it was something that was a great idea, and it just, in the form of a game, it was great. It was just, it's impossible to play our creation. With that said, I do have a few screenshots to actually show you guys while I describe some of the features in this game. So this was the main menu. It actually it moves while you play it. The mouse cursor is this little red dot right here. So yes, there was survival mode. Training is simply, it's a controls list. We originally had a more thought out plan for training, but that didn't work out because of how much we had in the game to begin with. For the options menu, it does lower a lot of the settings in the game. You'll also find a smaller range of view if you switch it to lower options. However, this does not stop the amount of things that are scripts that are running at the same time. So the game is still extremely laggy in that state. Obviously, the credits are there with my other team members in there. When you would hover over these things, these options, they would light up, and it was interesting. I'm just going to browse through a couple of these screenshots. If you notice, there was a day counter. There was a lot of variables in this game. A lot of counters, a lot of data being processed at the same time. You still had score, which was in my previous game, Lockdown. We had a nice little compass, which I changed the sprites for. I made it look a little more fancy. We also had an ammo section. I finally implemented a health system. I removed the health bar from the screen, and I made it more realistic to the point where there would be blood splatters on the screen. I think there is one in a future screenshot later on that I'll show you. So there were blood splatters on the screen. Over time, you could collect health packs to regenerate your health, and it was a fun process to work with. That was something else that was counted at the same time. In the inventory, I don't have a screenshot of it, so I'll pull it up right here, GameMaker. We had a variety of different things that you can keep track of. You can keep track of your health, obviously, since there was no health bar. Gasoline, which was important because there are cars in the game that you can drive. Food and water levels, which were also important because your health will slowly decay if you don't eat or drink. And there were grenades. Grenades were limited, 3 at a time. Back to the screenshots. What you're seeing right now is sort of like a funhouse area. There's a future screenshot that shows the inside of this. When you first enter, it's all lit up. You would go in and everything would go dark. There would be dark fog in there, and you would see reflections of zombies all over the funhouse mirrors, not knowing which zombie is the real thing. You can actually see the outside of the funhouse right there. It's called Joe's Funhouse. We had various sprites, especially for the zombies, because they were the most important aspect of this zombie survival game. We had drivable automobiles with their own radios. The cars can be used for various things like running the zombies over, etc. But like I said, you do need gasoline in order to use the cars. Something else I want to bring up, it's a helicopter that we do have in the game. You have to get a certain amount of points to actually use it, a lot of points actually, because the helicopter is very overpowered. You can fly above the enemies for a certain amount of time, however long your gasoline lasts, and pretty much rain fire towards all the zombies. And it was something that was very interesting to develop, to work with the Z-axis, especially since most of the game takes place on an XY coordinate plane. Right here on the right, you also notice there are civilians. You can talk to them. Nothing happens to them. We had like 3 voice actors voicing civilians. We also had voice actors for the main character who would every so often, given a time interval, he would say something in the game reflecting what's going on. You can choose between 2 soldiers at the main menu. Each has their own voice. There's a forest, there's a town, there's simply a huge variety of things. Again, this is the funhouse. There's even a sheep, which we even had a voice actor for. There are barracks where you can actually get weapons, the 3 weapons in the game. You can get health packs, various things. Right here you can see the blood splatters I was talking about. Over there you can see the helicopter that you can use. Don't worry, the heads-up display actually looks a lot more fancy. There's a grenade pickup. This is the launch pad, which you can actually use to access the helicopter once you have a certain amount of points. I think it was like 10,000 or something. Your score is displayed over here. Those are all the screenshots I had, but there are a few things I didn't mention. There is a boat in the game that you can use to travel around the map in the water and take rain fire on the zombies, but again, that uses gasoline. You may ask, where do you get gasoline? There is a gas station in the game where you can get gasoline, where you can also access vending machines and find food and water. There's a small building in the forest that actually has a room from that zombies map that we had in Lockdown, the previous game that I developed a year prior to this. And there's a lot more in the game. I simply can't remember all of it at this point when I'm making this developer diary, simply because I made it almost 2 or 3 years ago. It was a fun experience to work on. I really wish it was playable. If the frame rate was a lot better, it's something that I'm sure all of you would enjoy. It's so good. There's so much effort that we put into this game, into building this map, into building the environments in the game. There's just an incredible amount of detail that we put in here. So it was very disappointing, but at the same time it was a great project to work on with my friends, and it was just something that really helped me learn a lot about game design and making a great game itself. So I hope to make something like this in the future that actually runs well enough for people to play it. So thank you for watching. I loved making this game. I loved working with others to work on certain aspects of this game. And I'll see you in the next Dev Diary.